Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko says the country is preparing for war, even as Minsk releases more political prisoners and signals openness to limited cooperation with the West. The developments raise questions about Belarus's security fears, its ties with Moscow, and Lukashenko's broader political strategy. Joining us are Ryhor Nizhnikau, senior researcher at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. Welcome to TVP World. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
So it's a pleasure. So is Belarus preparing for war?
Well, no, we can say this quite straightforwardly, but it depends on the definition. And of course, if we listen to Lukashenko, he is preparing for war for over a decade. So in this regard, the narrative of war is closely intertwined with his political ruling.
So if he's not preparing for war, what is this military mobilization, the rotation of certain units? What's it all for?
I would say, well, first of all, it's not per se a mobilization, right? So the fact that he will checking certain troops for their readiness, preparedness, it's not mobilization per se. As for political logic, I think it's diverse. On one hand, it's clearly domestic. His rule is driven by the fear of war, the fear of spillover of the war into Belarus. This is something that his propaganda machinery is actively using inside the country. So in this regard, it's to scare people inside the country. But at the same time, it has a clear external direction. This is the way how he shows to Vladimir Putin his allegiance. And on the other hand, this is, one of his tricks in so-called relations with the EU, because and with the West, he always has two tricks. He is not a very skillful magician. It's either you work with me, or I will show you who is the strongest here.
Right. Okay. So there are 2 points that you make there. Let's start with the first one first, and that is he's scaring his people that the country is under threat. From whom?
Well, this is the case. It's obviously from the West. This is not Russia. So this is the case where he actually says that the threat is from the West, and but I would even say it's more general. It's you can see he doesn't need to specify. What he knows that people are afraid of the war, as all neighborhood countries, and in this regard, what he tries to say is that the war might come on the Belarusian soil, and I'm the only one who prevents it, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. So this is his logic.
Right, but there's a contradiction between that line of thought and the fact that American representatives are going to Minsk and negotiating the release of political prisoners. I mean, is he working with the West or not?
Well, this is neither Lukashenko or his propaganda have shown logics in their actions or narratives. But the key is that the U.S.-Belarus rapprochement is a beast of a bit different nature. This is something where clearly America is still an enemy, but you can use the enemy to your purposes. So in this regard, Lukashenko tries to instrumentalize this administration to promote his agenda, but he still sees the West as the primary enemy, primary opponent.
Okay, so we know that some political prisoners have been released, including the Polish Belarusian Poczobut, the Ukrainian, the journalist. And that was put into place, was facilitated by the American delegation. Why did America do that? What's in it for the US?
I don't see a strategy in the U.S. administration, or if they have one, it's built on the same logic as the rapprochement between EU and Lukashenko in 2015. That they, when it started, they thought that this is another channel of communication to Putin. Maybe someone in Washington thought that this might somehow, they might actually, that Lukashenko is serious, that Lukashenko wants to distance from Moscow. Right now, it's just, has a kind of a past dependency logic that, okay, there is some progress, so let's keep it. But I don't, no matter what happens or what has happened by now, I don't see a clear strategy in the US steps. And I think that this type of a rapprochement has already reached its ceiling, because Lukashenko will not do anything, will not change his behavior. And that's, I think, we should underline. For him, political prisoners are a commodity, and he sells it, but he knows the price, and he knows that this is the only thing he is ready to offer.
But he's promising to release some more prisoners now. Why?
Well, because I think the logic for him was that, and it's actually mimics the logic of Putin and why the U.S. was mediator in Russia-Ukraine, is still a mediator in these talks. That Americans are will actually break the resistance of Europeans. And that actually sanctions will be lifted, and it will weaken Europe. It will weaken transatlantic relations. So it's all fits brilliantly to his goals. But the problem is that Americans cannot do this, and this is a miscalculation by this administration of Lukashenko. And clearly, even if it doesn't go further than this, it still legitimizes internationally a little bit Lukashenko, because he is no longer a pariah. If Trump or his representatives talks to him, so it's a low-cost game for him with huge potentially wins.
Understood. Now, you mentioned earlier that Lukashenko is afraid of war coming into Belarus. Well, Russia did exactly that in 2022 when they used Belarus as a launching pad for the invasion of Ukraine. Do you expect anything like that to happen again? I mean, we hear about exercises being conducted in Belarus, joint exercises with Russia. Is Belarus an armed camp for Russia?
Yes, we have to underline nothing changed since 22. Belarus is still a co-aggressor state. Belarus facilitates Russia's aggression against Ukraine. It gives Moscow what it wants. Everything that Moscow wants, it means delivers in military and political terms. So in this regard, if Moscow needs Belarus as a Platzdarm again, or in any other capacity, it will get it, and it will not ask Lukashenko's permission. The only question is whether, or I would say when it might happen. And this depends on the logic in the Russian-Ukrainian war. I don't see it in the very near future, because Russia does not have resources to do that. But we can imagine that the next stage of war might look, or Russia might need Belarus again at the next stage of the war.
Is there any way that the West can actually weaken the relationship between Russia and Belarus?
Between Lukashenko and Putin, or Lukashenko and Russia, no. So the only way, and this is the strategy of the West, should be oriented at. It should be actually oriented not at Lukashenko, but actually on the country. So the more Lukashenko is weakened, the more resources Russia has to spend on the regime and its support. So the less resources it has for its military aggression in Ukraine. So in this regard, Russia and Lukashenko are in the same basket and should be treated accordingly. And the second way is obviously to boost the Belarusian society. This is untapped potential still for the West. Belarusian society inside the country is neglected. And these are the prime allies of Ukraine and the EU, because these are the people who actually have been resisting both the regime and also Belarusian participation in the aggression against Ukraine in 22 and onwards. So this is something that, I think is left and is not fully used by the West.
Understood. Ryhor Nizhnikau, thank you very much for your analysis, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.